You're listening to the All Systems Go podcast, the show that teaches you everything you need to know to put your business on autopilot. Learn how to deploy automated marketing and sales systems in your business the right way with your host, the professor of automation himself and founder of Automation Bridge, Chris Davis.
Welcome to the All Systems Go podcast. I'm your host, Chris L. Davis, founder of Automation Bridge, an online publication for small business automation, where we focus on turning digital marketing professionals into automation service providers. And in this episode, I want to speak to what you must do once you have your processes in place. And simply put, that is to follow them. I know it sounds remedial, but success follows those who follow their process. I'm going to discuss exactly what that means and give you insight on what awaits those who do not. But before we get started, if you're new to the podcast, do me a favor, because I want your subscribe and your review to be sincere. Listen to this episode in its entirety, and on the back end of this episode, make sure that you leave a 5-star rating and review. The All Systems Go podcast is in all major podcasting outlets: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. We're on YouTube. Wherever you get your podcasts, we are there. If you are a listener, meaning you've listened to more than one episode and you haven't left a 5-star rating and review yet, please do so. It helps get the word out. It helps validate this podcast as the bona fide marketing and sales automation podcast out. If you've been listening, you know, I've been told time and time again, this entire podcast is like an ongoing masterclass. So it's a very simple way to tell me thank you, that you're listening, you're appreciating, and you're getting value out of this. All right. So, thinking, I'm pausing here because I'm rubbing my hands, because this is a very important topic for me, because process is everything. And the more mature I become in business and the stronger I get as a leader in digital marketing and I should say digital automated marketing, or just automated marketing in general, I respect it more and more. And when I look back on my journey, most of my issues came from the exact topic of today, is bypassing process. And the reason why I bypassed process prior was because I was naive to what the process was. So it was easy for me to abort because I really didn't know I was aborting, right? To now it's more of a discipline. And here's what I mean. Process is everything. And it's important. Let me put it like this. I used to be more focused on production to produce a profit, right? Like that. I feel like that's a fair assessment of everybody. When you get started in business, you're focused on, what do I need to do to make money, right? And I've learned the errors of those ways, because process is important, as it's oftentimes your product, especially if you're a service provider. The process in which you render your service is everything, right? And if you have a different model where you're producing a product, manufacturing, or, a physical good, the process you use to create and deliver your product is just as important, if not more, than the product itself. Okay. So though there is so much I can talk about process, and it applies to every facet of your business, every area of your life, today I'm going to be focused on the digital journey. Okay. Building out that customer journey, right? Things to take into account. So let me just say this. It's there for a reason. Okay. It's not one of those things, you know how you have these movies where somebody looks at someone's like, oh, what's this? Oh, we don't need this. They pull the plug, and then all of a sudden things start breaking. It's like, no, it was there for a reason. Why? And a lot of times we can get so familiar with our process, we forget why it's there. And some of you are so foreign to your own processes that you forget why you put it in place. And we can't do that. We can't afford to do that. As a listener to this podcast, I am always, you've heard me preach process continually. It's not going to stop anytime soon, just so you know. And I respect it. And truthfully told, process, we talk about information being a cornerstone of automation. Process is the bloodline. It flows through all of automation. Without it, automation has no movement, right? You can have information, but without process, without the blood flowing, it's not live, it's not active. And this is why I speak about it so much. And strong, clearly streamlined processes lay the foundation for efficient execution, whether it's digital or not. Okay? Process is powerful, but no matter how great it is, it requires your discipline. And here's what I mean. You recall those movies where the successful business folks are at dinner and it's a networking dinner and they decide to do work together. And it's this whole, have your people call my people and let's get this done. Right. And what I see when I look at those types of scenes, what I see now is it shows a mutual respect for the process that's been put in place. There's a lot of P's today, everybody. The processes that have been put in place to conduct business. What they don't do is ink the deal right then and then notify the team what they've done, which requires the team to work backwards in most cases. There are some cases where the CEO would just make that executive decision, say, hey, look, this was too important of a deal. We're just going to have to work backwards. But they're aware of that. Okay. The problem is most of you are skipping processes and steps to hurry up and get to that finish line. And you're not realizing the strain you're putting on yourself or your team. And if you're doing this or have done this, I guarantee those responsible for fulfilling the task on the back end, those that have to work backwards to do this now, they'll have a mouthful to say about it. Now, they may not feel empowered to say that to you, but trust and believe somebody's getting that mouthful and it's wearing on them. It's just a matter of time before they're just like, okay, we either need to change the process or commit to going through it. And that's what I mean by discipline. Okay, because what people don't often understand and use process as is a vetting tool. Right. If someone can successfully complete all the prior stages successfully, you can feel confident about their progression to the next step. And you're starting to see, as I'm speaking, you should start to see parallels between the digital journey, right, as well as like sub journeys within there. You think of your entire customer journey as a process, and every stage you're like, hey, you need to fill out this information. Then you need to do this. You need to do that. And if they're not willing to do that, then the vetting process works and essentially deems them and says, hey, they're not a good deal. This won't be a good opportunity for you. Right. So as good as I feel, as good as they may feel about the person they're sitting across from at dinner, in order to get the deal done, it must, through discipline, go through the process to ensure it's something that aligns with the business needs, goals, and mission. A lot of times when you're talking, it's so easy to visualize it in your mind, and you're not thinking of all of the boxes that you have to check. So if you just go off for that person who inks the deal right then and there, then sends them through the process, a lot of times there's all kind of flags that comes up. Hey, we didn't realize they're not this. Did you realize they're not even living in America? Oh, we always need to ensure that they have this amount of money in savings. But because you just wanted to get the deal, you saw money, you saw the opportunity, you missed all those boxes that process checks and ensures that your yes is a strong yes, right? But if you bypass the process, you introduce variables that can be detrimental. Okay, so I guess it's important to note, if you don't currently have any processes defined in all areas of your business, of course, we're focusing on sales and marketing. But if you don't have these processes defined in all areas of your business, you're operating and running your business in the most random, inconsistent, and highly volatile manner possible. And you have to be exhausted. Maybe you're used to being exhausted, but just let me tell you, there are people that get more done than you and have more energy than you. Just so you know. Okay. This is not the norm. If you don't have processes defined in all areas of your business, and I'll take it a step further in technology to help execute those processes, you're working harder than you should. All right. And again, especially true for more mature automated marketing and sales systems, you not only have the process for everything, you have technology in place to execute the process for you, which means there are defined inputs and clarified outputs all along the way. I should be able to look at the output, the information I've captured, what they've done, and know exactly where they're at in the journey. If you don't know that, I'm telling you, you don't have a true customer journey. I'm just being honest with you. And I was reminded, listen, this thing is so important. Every time, you got your main system, everybody, right? We've got the Significant Six. If you haven't listened to that, go back in the early episodes and listen to the Significant Six. These are the foundational systems that are at play in every single business. Okay. But outside of that, that's your main process. There's all kind of sub processes, right? There's all kind of tasks, that subsystems, I'll say, that you have to build out based on process along the way. And I'll use an example that I just recently went through when I was setting up a registration process for a live event. And what this process did is it required people to fill out a specific form because it triggered the necessary steps that were required for attendance. Right. So I had some zaps going in the background. It's sending confirmations and other things that needed to be signed. All of this was set up. The process was communicated to all parties involved. OK, so what I mean is I consulted with everybody to identify what needed to be done. OK, what is the process? Forget about technology. What needs to happen. Right. Then you take that process, couple it with technology, and it becomes a new thing that the same people that you consulted with need to be trained on how to use, because you took that, because a process plus technology becomes a system. Right. So I sat down with them and we nailed the process. Then I went on the back end and said, OK, what technology can we use to execute this? So now we've got process plus technology. So now there's a system. So this system, they need to be trained on what? What do they need to be trained on? They don't necessarily need to know the details of the insides of what's going on because they already know the process. They just need to know how to use the inputs. Okay, that's it. Because when we create a system, every output is correlated to a defined input. So now I sit down and say, hey, look, for this thing to happen, that process that we talked about, technology got it. All right. Here's what I need you to do. I need you to send everybody to this form for the event for registration. OK, so we create a landing page and everything. So now they know the process because we started with the process. I added technology, built a system. And now I'm saying, in order to do everything that we agreed upon in this process, I created a system that requires everybody comes through this entry point. OK. And if you haven't guessed it by now, they did not follow that process. OK, I was still able to adjust and build a system out on the fly for those that bypass the process. But I pay for it in time, effort, and more importantly, data, let alone excellence of execution. I have to mention that the execution was not as excellent as it could have been. And the data. Why for? Why for? Yes, I said why for. Why for would you put a process in place that extracts information and then bypass it? What you're saying is that information isn't really that important anyway. Or you may not know it. In hindsight, I don't know. I don't know if you've tried this. My true automators out there, you know this pain. Have you ever tried to recover information or have you ever tried to retrieve or acquire, I should say, information that you should have captured? Do you understand how hard that is? Right? Like reaching out to that person or that group of people and collecting information that you should have captured because everybody else has that information and somehow they went through a different process and don't. It's very hard. I saw it all the time in all the startups that I've worked with. Is this often hindsight? Oh, is there any way this data we could get this data? Is there any way we could see this? You didn't plan it out. And a lot of platforms are not retroactive like that. So the answer is no, but you can start tracking it from here on out. And this is where you'll find it, right? So if anything, listen, this is the All Systems Go podcast. So I get technical. We're nerds, right? But we're cool nerds, right? We're successful, profitable, business growing nerds. But the truth of the matter is give us our data. So if any reason at all that you should not be bypassing process that you put in place, it's for data's sake. Okay. And your marketing processes, as I mentioned, are extracting data along the way, data you will need and use to personalize the journey and make it to where you can close more effectively. If you're not aware of this, you're doing it already. It's just you're not doing it in a streamlined, organized manner to create momentum and power in your business. But I teach this form of progressive profiling throughout the customer journey. This is what I teach in my curriculum, is that this journey that you're creating, that you're crafting for that contact to go through and become a customer, it's filled with extraction points. And if you're not clear on what those extraction points are and the information that you're extracting along the way, well, you know, you're fighting a battle against yourself. Okay. But if you do that and then you bypass the steps you've put in place, which means you skipped a step, your data is now inconsistent and your journey is off. It could range from something as simple as every lead in your database not having the same first name. I mean, not the same first name, but not having the first name captured. So now in your emails, you're using the merge tag first name, and some people are seeing their name, some people are not. Right? Now that may be more simple, but think of it more critically, like their social security number, birth date, address, age, things of that nature that may be critical. You're like, wait a minute, they're too young. We don't serve that audience. They're too old. We don't serve that audience. They're in Jamaica. We don't serve people in Jamaica, right? These are real issues, everybody. And what I mean by real issues, I'm not qualifying these issues to say, hey, if you're starting out, you're witnessing this. I see this across the board. Big companies with millions of dollars, big companies struggle with this still because, and I mentioned this in the previous podcast, you can stumble your way up to success. You don't need strong, well-oiled systems and machines operating for your business for you to make $1 million or more. There are so many ways to make money that's exhausting, that burns people out, that isn't welcoming, but you're listening to this podcast because you're a small business owner that's looking to leverage lean operations, lean technology, lean team size. You're looking to put the minimum in to get the maximum output, and you're looking to do it in excellence, and you're providing extreme value. You're not just learning this to get something from people and hurry up, make a quick buck, then switch to the next audience. If that's the case, all of my teachings will not work for you at all. You'll be like, oh, this is boring. Get to the good stuff. This is how you transact in a marketplace, regardless of the saturation and competition. Stand out by following these steps to create a personalized journey, because the personalized marketing experience is going to exceed any other competition in the space. It will. Personalization makes you stand out. And this is how we do it, right? We put process in place, and we're intentional about every step of the process, what we're extracting, why we're extracting it, how we're going to use it. We know this, right? So if we bypass the process and we skip a step, you have to remember you put it in place for a reason. All steps are required. And whatever step is skipped, you're going to have to revisit. And most of the time, you have to do it manually. And depending on who the acumen of your builder, the person who built that system, they may or may not be able to make that quick adjustment. You know, in my example where I talked about the registration, this is on site, everybody. And registration is going off because the entry point that I had created based on the process we all agreed to was not the only entry point. Somewhere in defining the process, somebody neglected to tell me there was another entry point, or that the entry point we discussed was not done with accurate information. So even though the system was set up, it would have never worked because that entry point for that audience wasn't right. You know, this was a more mature, I should say a more traditional audience. So, you know, having them fill out a form digitally on their phone to me is straightforward. But for this audience, they were like, where is it at? How does it get on my phone? You know, a lot of them didn't even know where the internet browser icon was on their iPhone. And I'm like, you have this iPhone and you're just using it to make calls and send texts. Wow. Right. But that showed me the difference in audiences. So now I've built a system on a process and that could work, but won't work for this audience. So now I have to shift, let alone the process changed on site. So my point too, depending on your builder, listen, I'm proficient in pretty much every tool on earth, like worth knowing for marketing and sales. And I'm able to shift real quick, you know, get a hotspot, pull up Zapier, right? Start reconfiguring some things, Google Sheets, and all of it on the fly. But most people are not going to be able to do that, right? So it introduces, when you skip the steps, right, and they have to be revisited manually, it introduces the potential error and inefficiency, right? There's a good chance you're not going to be able to capture the information that you were supposed to capture or that the process was set up to capture. And if you do, it's going to be recovered in the most inefficient way possible. That's just what it is. What I'm saying is, when you set up a process, use it. It's got your back. Send people through it. I am known if we engage in person, you're like, hey, let's get together, this and that. There's a process for that. Hey, I want to be on the podcast. Hey, let's da. Oh, okay, cool. Well, I'm gonna send you an email with a link to my calendar, right? Oh, I want to enroll. Okay, go to this page. I have all of these systems in place built on process and technology. Why would I, on the fly, create a new process that I don't know is going to work and is not streamlined with everything else in place and can have my database dirty? What is a dirty database? A dirty database is a database that has contacts with mismatching information. Again, they're at the same place, but for one of the contacts, you have name, email, phone, and the other contact, you just have email. That's dirty. It's inconsistent. Okay. That is the power of it. You have a system. Work the system. Do not go through all of this trouble to learn and build it out, because it takes a lot, and then bypass it. Do not. Why would you shoot yourself in the foot, stab yourself in the thigh, punch yourself in the eye? That's literally what you're doing. Why? That's abuse. That's beyond abuse, right? But many of you are doing this, and you're settling for, this is the way that it's always been. This is the way it works. I don't have help. I don't know any other way. There is a better way. There are people right now I can attest to that are learning this in learning how to apply it and implement it. There are. Help is on its way. But until then, there are 3 ways that can help you solve these issues. If I'm listing off these things and you're like, oh my gosh, you were feeling the pain but didn't know where it was from, it's because it's from not respecting process. Okay, so there's 3 ways. All right. So create your process dynamically. That's really what my whole example of the registration process that I set up. And by dynamically, I mean allow contacts to be placed at any point as long as data from the previous steps is captured. And you can't do that. You can't do that without mapping. This is why mapping is important. Again, you didn't hear me say, hey, they said they needed a registration process, so I just set up some technology. No, I sat down, talked through the process, mapped it out, identified all that I could. There were some variables that I just didn't understand, right? Didn't know were coming. So we shifted, right? So you want to create your process dynamic to where it encompasses multiple entry points. You know, you're building worst case scenario, right? All right. You want to account for both digital and manual entry to the same process. Okay, so a good example of this is if somebody goes to a payment page of yours, they can enter their information themselves, right? But let's say you're on the phone with somebody or you're in person and somebody's like, hey, look, can you get me set up right now? Now, one option is you just give them a device of yours or have them pull up a page or whatnot. But there's nothing wrong, or maybe they're on the phone, but there's nothing wrong with you pulling up that payment page, asking their information and filling it out on their behalf. Right? So in that respect, your process, because of how you're using it, can account for both people doing it digitally, which means on their own, or manually, like you actually doing it. Right? You have to account for them entering it or you entering it for them. These are just things to be mindful of. Right? Because if it's watch this, if it's PayPal, right, and they have to pay with PayPal, you're not going to be able to log into their PayPal account. These are just things to be mindful of. If you're using a payment processor or some method that requires them to log in, or, it requires it to be specific to them, you'll want to at least have another way. Okay, if that doesn't work, I've got this payment page on a page on my website using Gravity Forms will say. So it may not be used often, but you have this page just in case you need to process that payment, right? Because you're factoring in a dynamic input that may be manual. You may have to do it because, again, you always be ready. You have to always be ready to take the sale. Right? Complete the transaction, always in a ready position. All right. And the third step is require people to go through the entry point setup. That's about as simple as I can make it. Okay. This is the discipline I talked about. So you solve it, You solve it with discipline, and it takes time. It takes practice. Some of you, when you're in person, you're no good. You make all these promises. You get on a Zoom call, and before you know it, you're like, sorry, team, I told them we'd have it by tomorrow. And they're like, that takes a whole week. What were you thinking? Right? So what this means is that every place you capture information should have a process attached to it. These processes should be sequential, right? So, we talked about the first key was, allow contacts to be placed in at any point, as long as that current point that they're placed in is capturing data from the previous steps. So look at it like this. If you've got point A, B, and C, right? And someone enters at point C instead of A. All right. At that point of entry, you should have also collected information A and B. So let's say you have a lead magnet and it just asks for email. And then perhaps they can sign up for a webinar and it asks for first name, email, and the biggest struggle. And that's point B. And point C is they can schedule a call. Now, if they schedule a call, maybe it's asking for more information, phone number, this, and that. But it should also ask for all of the information prior, right? Their name, their email, their biggest struggle. Because if they can get to point C and you didn't need information from point A or B, why are you capturing it? Right? It sounds simple and straightforward, but do you know how many people are doing this? They're like, well, look, if they fill out my scheduled time with me, I'm going to ask them a different set of questions than if they would have come to this same, if they would have appeared on my calendar through a different way. So now you've got, again, dirty data. It's mismatched. You have one person that's scheduled time. You've got their whole profile. You have another person that's filled out time and you're like, oh, it just has their email. These are the simple things, the small things that propagated through a larger system or a more mature system creates a effect in your business that's just exhausting. You get tired of the simple stuff. You can't even focus on the next thing. Your vision gets real short because you're like, look, I would think about that and get excited about that. But every time we do this thing, it doesn't work. Right? And I will be remiss to not mention, of course, if I'm talking about capturing data from previous points, if they come in at a further point, if they go through sequentially, you better be pre-populating. You better be. I asked nicely in the previous podcast, like 2 podcast episodes ago, I asked nicely. I said, pre-populate, please. That was my nice plea. Okay. So from here on out, shame on you if you're not doing it. It makes the journey easier, but what does it also do? Keeps your data consistent. That's what the process is there for. Okay, if you have the information, don't ask for it again. I will tell you, with a passion, I hate when I go through somebody's process that asks for my name and email 4 or 5 times throughout the sequential steps. It's the fastest way to be on my hit list. Right? I'm just letting you know. And I appreciate it when I'm filling out something and it's like, oh, you got my name already in there. Oh, look at my email. It's already there for me. It's like showing up and the dinner table is made. All you got to do is sit down and eat. Why would you require somebody to sit down, make the table, wash their dishes? Like, prepare the path and send people through the path. Right? Do not do it if you're not going to use it. And I have to keep saying this because somehow what happens is digital, it's all good up here in your brain. Analog, it's fine. It's something about when you transfer it to digital that people just get lost. They lose. It's almost like they're not looking at digital as a mirror. They don't look at the system as a digital mirror to their manual methods, right? But it is, the automated system is the digital mirror to your manual methods. They're one and the same. They're not different. So what I see oftentimes is people treat it differently. They do. They look at it and they're like, okay, I need to do, since it's online. No, not since it's online. What are we doing? Let's just get that same exact process. What I'm doing since it's online is coupling it with technology. It's the same process though. I'll improve it where I can, right? Your attention, your fingerprint, right? And your action is not required because technology is going to do that, but it's the same process, right? So as you all continue to build out the digital journey using your website, just understand your process needs to take into account the dynamic nature of capturing information. You're not going to be able to account for everything. And you always got your spies and your people who are just trying to poke around and break your stuff. So be it. 80-20. Focus on the 80% of the people that will truly go down that path the way that they're supposed to. And more so, remember, the processes you have in place are worth following. Save yourself and your team from wasting time. You're paying for this. CEOs, you're paying for the time. Be better for you to just flush the money down the toilet and get it over with faster and less exhausting. Okay? But more importantly, process will prevent you from doing repetitive work while maintaining high value, especially as a content creator, right? If you have created valuable content, right? You've got it out there, and you know it works, and somebody asks you a question that you've answered in your content, you should have a process to just send people to that content. It already exists. It's repetitive for you to literally say the exact same thing. Type it in an email or explain it away. They can go and read at their leisure. Again, if they don't go and read it themselves, perhaps that's the vetting that you needed. Oh, you're not serious about this, right? Using the process to be resourceful is what I'm saying. Okay. You can increase your resourcefulness as a content creator by having processes in place to keep track of all of the content that you're creating so that you can easily navigate people to it, right? Just think in process. I'm always thinking, okay, what's the process for that? Okay, what's the process for this? And once somebody commits to the process, so once the process is finalized, then we add technology. It becomes a system. That means we're going to be able to put an input and expect an output. But it starts with the process, okay? And I've dedicated this episode for external processes visible for public entry, but the same rules apply for all internal processes that people don't see, only your team does. It's all the same. All the same. What is the process that we, get a web page updated? So now if somebody just jumps in and updates copy, it's like, whoa. Wait a minute. Before, we don't just go onto a website and update the copy. We go into the copy doc in Google Drive. And then from there, we update the copy, make sure everybody has signed off, whatever the case is. And then we always copy from the Google Doc to the web page so that those who aren't on our web page, we've got people on our team that like to, if they're looking for a particular copy, they're using their internal database for that. I know people that use Notion like that, right? All of their pages, all of the copy for all their pages are on Notion. And it's quicker to just do a quick search for keywords or whatever in Notion than to log onto the website, go into the search forum, XYZ. Right? Or if the website goes down and all of your copy is on the website, what do you do? These are things that terrify me. Oh my goodness, to have all of my content in a platform that could disappear in all of my content with it, like no redundancy. Talk about keep me up at night. But I said that, I'm on a tangent. I said that to say that's an example of an internal process, right? Update the internal docs, then the website. Don't just jump into the website, because now we have what? Dirty data. Dirty data means my data on my website is not matching my copy docs. It's inconsistent. All right. So who needed to hear this one? All right. This was I don't know. You all had to tell me the weight of this one. It felt a little heavy. I felt light in the beginning. Then as I started talking to it, I said, man, this could be heavy, because there's people that are not even aware of the value and the attention they need to be paying to process, especially if you are a tech builder. If you are responsible for building out technology online on behalf of clients or yourself, and you are not the master of process, and you know somebody who needs to master process, first off, you need to listen to this again. Second off, you need to send this to them. You may need to have a listening party and then have a discussion afterwards. I'm serious, because you have to get this process down. Remember, it's the bloodline. It's the blood that flows through automation. It makes it move. Okay. So share it. And by the way, remember at the top, I said, listen to this episode in its entirety. This is the entirety I was speaking about. So if this is your first time, now is the time for you to go leave that 5-star rating and review. This will keep playing. I still have a little bit more to say, but while I'm saying that, you can literally go to the app. This will play in the background on your smartphone, if you're listening to it on your smartphone or on your computer. But your 5-star rating and review is appreciated. Here at Automation Bridge, we're dedicated to training the digital marketing professionals to become automation service providers. That means we're equipping these professionals with the tools, acumen, accountability, skills to deploy automated marketing and sales systems for small businesses, because they're in dire need. We walk them through how to extract process the right way, how to quickly identify the right technology, build that system with minimal failure. It's a huge need right now for small businesses. They're looking to navigate this digital terrain, and we're readying ourselves for that. So if that's you, if you would like to be a part of this army, join forces with me and learn how to do this the right way, I want you to go to automationbridge.com/ASP. That's automationbridge.com/ASP for automation service provider, and take the next steps to talk to someone on the team to assess if you'd be a good fit for the community, the curriculum, and everything that we have in place. The time to do this is never been greater than it is now. You all know this. I'm not saying anything you can't see with your own eyes. Some of you are listening to this you've been trying to go digital for the last 3 years. Right? You're the wrong person. You need that automation service provider to help you out. That in-house marketer who knows automation to help you out. But I've been seeing this with my own eyes and serving it with my own hands. So I'm trying to multiply the hands. So if you like to get your hands in the pot, there's room for you. So all the show notes for this podcast are accessible at automationbridge.com/podcast. You can subscribe there as well and listen to the other episodes at your leisure. All right. So until next time, I see you online. Automate responsibly, my friends.